Let's get right into it. Number 12. Sharing bathwater. Imagine, if you will, a time before every household had its own personal porcelain god and a seemingly endless supply of hot water. A time when cleanliness was a communal effort. Your ancestors, bless their hardy souls, didn't exactly have the luxury of daily showers or even individual baths. Instead, families would often share the same bathwater, one after another, usually starting with the patriarch, then moving down through the children, and ending with the infants. Yes, the baby often got the murky, lukewarm, family soup leftover bath. Now, before you recoil in horror and contemplate the sheer amount of ancient grime, consider the psychology at play. This wasn't just about resource scarcity. It was a deeply ingrained social norm. There was no concept of, ew, gross, because everyone was doing it. The human mind is incredibly adaptable, and what seems utterly revolting to our modern, sanitized sensibilities was simply Tuesday to them. It speaks volumes about how our perception of hygiene is less about an objective truth and more about cultural conditioning. We've evolved, not just biologically but socially, to find certain things acceptable and others utterly abhorrent. Your great-great-great-grandparents probably wouldn't bat an eye at a shared tub, but they'd likely faint dead away if they saw you meticulously scrubbing your entire body with a loofah and then throwing it away after a few uses. It's all relative, isn't it? Number 11. Poisonous cosmetics. Ever wondered how your ancestors achieved that glow? Spoiler alert, it often involved a touch of lead, a dash of arsenic, and a sprinkle of mercury. Forget parabens and sulfates. Your great-great-great-grandmothers were literally painting poison onto their faces in the name of beauty. Take the Venetian ceruse, a popular lead-based facial whitener in the Elizabethan era. This stuff made you pale and interesting, right up until it started eating away at your skin, causing hair loss, paralysis, and eventually a rather unattractive death. Or how about belladonna drops to dilate the pupils, giving that wide-eyed, alluring look? The catch? Belladonna is highly toxic and can cause blindness, hallucinations, and cardiac arrest. It's a true testament to the psychological power of perceived beauty standards. Despite the very real and horrifying physical consequences, people continued to use these deadly concoctions. Why? Because the societal pressure to conform to beauty ideals often overrides our most basic survival instincts. Your brain, for all its cleverness, can be incredibly susceptible to social cues, even when those cues are quite literally trying to kill you. It's a bizarre dance between vanity and self-preservation, where sometimes vanity wins out, leaving behind a trail of, well, poisoned beauty. These examples highlight some of the striking differences in the way humans lived in the past compared to today, revealing how cultural norms and technological advancements have drastically altered our lives. Here's a breakdown of each. Number 10. Living with your livestock. This blurring of the line between home and barn emphasizes survival strategies, where livestock weren't just for food or labor. They played a vital role in providing warmth and security. Living with animals could also foster a different kind of bond, one built out of necessity and daily interaction rather than companionship alone. The modern shift towards separate living spaces is a relatively recent development, driven by comfort and hygiene standards. But it's interesting to think about how our ancestors would view the luxury of climate-controlled homes and personal space today. Number 9. Public executions as entertainment. The normalization of public executions as a form of entertainment underscores a chilling desensitization to violence. It's a stark contrast to our current expectations of entertainment and punishment. In the past, these events were not only a display of justice, but a communal event where social norms were reinforced through gruesome spectacle. Today, we are appalled by the idea, yet it was once a common feature of life, reminding us of the sometimes arbitrary nature of social progress and how future generations might view our own entertainment choices. Number 8. The barber surgeon. The dual role of barbers as surgeons reflects the lack of specialized knowledge and sanitation practices that plagued early medicine. It's hard to imagine the terror and trust that people must have had in their barber surgeons, especially knowing the conditions under which these procedures took place. This history highlights the massive leap we've made in understanding hygiene, medicine, and pain management. What once was routine became a terrifying necessity, showing just how far we've come in improving public health and healthcare practices. These examples all underscore the evolution of societal norms, from our relationships with animals to the ways we treat the sick and punish criminals. It's fascinating to imagine how future generations might look back at our own practices and find them equally shocking. These fascinating glimpses into the past show how different human life was before modern science, medicine, and social protections. Here's a breakdown of the key ideas. Number 7. No concept of germs. Before the discovery of germs and bacteria, people lived in a world full of invisible threats. Disease was a mystery, and illness was often attributed to bad air or divine wrath, rather than infections. This lack of understanding about germs and sanitation led to a far higher mortality rate from diseases that we now know how to prevent or treat. It's sobering to think about how people unknowingly lived in such unsanitary conditions, without any clear idea of what was causing widespread death. The psychological toll of this constant uncertainty about illness must have been immense. Today, with our knowledge of germs and the luxury of things like hand sanitizer, we can hardly imagine living in such ignorance. Number 6. Child labor as a family norm. The idea of child labor, while horrifying to us now, was once just an accepted part of life. Children were viewed as important economic contributors to the household, often working in harsh, dangerous conditions from a very young age. The concept of childhood as a time for play and education is a relatively recent invention. In the past, children had to work to help the family survive, and education wasn't necessarily seen as a right. This starkly contrasts with our modern-day understanding of childhood, where children's well-being and education are often prioritized. For our ancestors, having a carefree childhood would have seemed like an unattainable luxury. Number 5. Living in constant pain. Chronic pain was a normal part of life for most of human history. With limited medical knowledge and no effective pain management tools, people lived with the constant discomfort of ailments like toothaches, arthritis, or injuries that never fully healed. The psychological impact of living with such persistent pain is difficult to imagine. People had to develop immense resilience simply to survive day-to-day life. It's remarkable how much we now take for granted when it comes to pain relief, with things like over-the-counter medication, anesthesia, and advanced treatments. Our ancestors lived in a world where pain was often a constant companion, and they had to endure it as best as they could. Number 4. Believing in literal monsters. In a world where many things were unexplained, people often turned to folklore, superstition, and myth to make sense of their experiences. From demons causing illness to monsters lurking in the woods, these literal beliefs in supernatural creatures were deeply embedded in culture. Without scientific understanding, the human mind filled in the gaps with terrifying stories to explain the unexplainable. This constant fear of the supernatural would have been a significant psychological burden, and it's striking to think how much more terrifying everyday life must have been in a world full of real, or imagined, monsters. Today, we might laugh at these old beliefs, but they were a real part of life for our ancestors. These examples show just how radically different life was in the past, and how advancements in science, medicine, and social attitudes have transformed our understanding of the world. It's a powerful reminder of how far we've come and how much we take for granted today. These examples reflect just how far humanity has come in terms of comfort, health, and societal norms. They also serve as stark reminders of how our understanding of hygiene, relationships, and life itself has evolved over the centuries. Here's a breakdown of each one. Number 3. Communal toilets, or lack thereof. Before modern plumbing, personal hygiene was a far cry from what we know today. The lack of private, flushing toilets meant that humans lived in environments where waste was often in plain sight, creating not only an overwhelming odor, but also rampant disease. The communal latrine, or simply relieving oneself in the street, was a normal part of daily life. The psychological toll of living in such conditions would have been immense, particularly regarding the lack of personal privacy and constant exposure to disease. Today, we can hardly imagine the discomfort and dangers associated with this, yet it was once the norm. Our modern toilets and sewage systems are luxuries that would have been unimaginable to our ancestors. Number 2, arranged marriages with zero input. In much of history, marriage wasn't about love, it was about survival, alliances, and economic stability. Your ancestors likely had little say in whom they married, as marriages were contracts made between families. The concept of romantic love in marriage was a modern shift, and most people married for practical reasons, like land, status, or dowries. From a psychological perspective, this speaks to how relationships were primarily built on community cohesion and survival. The idea of choosing a partner based on love would have been seen as impractical, or even selfish. Your ancestors would likely find our obsession with the one as an unnecessary and indulgent idea. Number 1, dying in your 20s was normal. The fact that dying young was a reality for many of our ancestors is one of the most sobering aspects of history. Life expectancy was often in the 20s or 30s due to high infant mortality rates, disease, and the lack of modern medical treatments. This shaped how people viewed life itself. There was a sense of urgency and a focus on survival, as planning for a long, comfortable life was simply out of the question. The psychological impact of this would have been enormous, as people lived in constant awareness of the fragility of life. It puts our modern concerns about aging, milestones, and career trajectories into perspective. Our ancestors lived with a much harsher reality, where each year survived was an accomplishment. These examples highlight how drastically different life was in the past and underscore how much we take for granted today in terms of health, relationships, and personal well-being. It's a reminder of the incredible strides we've made in human civilization and how our understanding of the world continues to evolve.